There's always been a relationship between the military and the media. It's an uneasy one, but it's existed for centuries. Reporters, photographers, eventually film crews traveling with the troops, or as it's come to be known, embedding. For the journalist, there's a trade-off. Embedding will get you closer to the front line and to the action, but often it's at the price of editorial independence. And in the same way that journalists use militaries to get news stories, militaries use journalists to get their version of a story out. Those are two agendas, and they often come into conflict. We saw an example of that last month when navies from the U.S. and more than 30 other countries completed the largest joint exercises the Middle East has ever seen, a dress rehearsal for the hunting and destroying of mines in the Strait of Hormuz. The Pentagon wanted to flex some muscle, and it wanted the media there to make sure that that message was delivered to Iran. Al Jazeera correspondent Cal Perry was on board, along with his cameraman Bradley McLennan. They had one eye on the naval exercises, the other on the media story.
The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, a floating home in the Gulf to 4,000 sailors from the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet. Based to 61 combat jets, and for a few days, us, a select group of journalists offered unique access by the Pentagon, which is counting on getting something in return.
Our mission is to support you for your mission, which is to report nice things about us during the underway.
24 professional journalists, along with one journalism student, invited aboard the USS Ponce to watch, listen, and report on an unprecedented mission to hunt down and destroy potential mines in the Strait of Hormuz, just off the coast of Iran. An embed on what the U.S. Navy calls the largest naval exercise the Gulf has ever seen.
I've embedded many times. You cannot get a sense of what the military is doing in any theatre of conflict, be it the Americans, be it the British, be it whoever, unless you spend some time with that military and get an insight into the tactics, the strategy, the game plan, and so on and so forth. So it is useful to know those things.
The group includes American outlets like CNN, PBS, ABC, and Bloomberg, as well as Japanese networks, TV Asahi and NHK World. But the object of the exercise was made clear by the inclusion of one of the BBC's specialty channels, BBC Persian, which, like the Pentagon, targets viewers in Iran. Embeds, like the military operations they are there to cover, work off a pretty packed schedule, handled by a team of military minders.
I'll be giving you a tour, and we'll have officers both at breakfast and at dinner.
It's a hard thing to manage. Cameramen are always looking for a good shot that doesn't have another cameraman in it. Journalists are always in search of a unique story. But here, you're expected to fall in line. And the other thing about journalists, they bore easily.
If you feel like you're being PowerPointed to death and you want to break out and get to see something else, then we can look at that and we can massage the program. But I'm hoping that you'll be able to be, around sufficiently involved that you can capture that.
But try as they might to make the journalists happy,
We will make that 27 hours feel like 36.
ultimately these two cultures, military and journalistic, are on a collision course. And as often happens on a dog and pony show like this, the journalists start complaining about what's on offer.
Why weren't we allowed to see actual mine clearing exercises?
Well, I think you are seeing. I mean, you've seen small craft deploy with divers. You've seen the MCMs. They've demonstrated the various capabilities they have. I believe we have shown you the nature of mine clearing operations, the capabilities the sailors would operate them, and I hope that you've had an overall constructive experience in seeing those things. We meant this to be as informative as possible.
Starting last night, there was a real sense that many people inside the media just simply were not getting the pictures that they needed, especially some of the TV media. And there was really the PAOs, the public affairs officers, they're everywhere. They know that. So this morning, they decided to add a lot to the schedule. What you see now is divers are going to go into the water. They'll have all their gear on. Of course, if this were a real world situation, they wouldn't have their gear on. They'd go out to the target first, then they put their gear on. But for us, they're going to put on a show.
Live fire exercises. Drones. combat flybys. Not only an impressive show of hardware conjured out of nowhere, but money shots, catnip for the camera.
I think there is a perception that the American military tries to control, the British military, whoever, tries to control the journalists who are with it. And I think in many cases there is some truth to that. They have their message that they want to get across. They want to be on message. They would like you to be on message. That's what they do. That is the purpose. The media is a tool of what they are doing.
Ultimately, the Pentagon measures the success of these naval maneuvers and the journalistic exercise by what it sees on television.
The Pentagon has been steadily beefing up its naval presence in the Gulf in response to some of the Iranian threats to mine and close the Strait of Hormuz.
Never before has the U.S. flexed so much muscle so close to Iran.
Only the most discerning or channel-hopping viewer would notice the similarities in coverage, that what they are watching has been expertly orchestrated.
I think there's a kind of sliding scale of usefulness of embeds. The sort of embed where you get 30 journalists in one place doing exactly the same thing at exactly the same time, and frankly probably not much going on, can be next to worthless. That doesn't necessarily mean that every embedded journalist goes along with that or just follows meekly in line. The problem comes when you have inexperienced reporters or reporters who come to identify very closely, too closely, with the troops. It can be useful, others can be much less useful.
I didn't really know what to expect, but it's definitely exceeded my expectations. It's been wonderful, learned a lot. I got to be around incredible journalists. It's been a great opportunity.
A great opportunity, but the officers on board are reluctant to discuss whether these naval maneuvers are really an exercise in intimidation.
All about mines, freedom of navigation, maritime security, not about any one particular country.
That's the official line, but the real message has been received loud and clear.
Now, the Navy tells us this training is not meant to be provocative, but Iranian officials say they are watching these exercises very closely and call the situation in the region sensitive.
And for the U.S. military that brought these journalists on board, that means mission accomplished.
Thanks very much for being here. It's been a pleasure sailing with you.
For the Listening Post, this is Cal Perry aboard the USS Ponce.